Yo, what's up everybody? It's Drewberry and it is Friday, and on Fridays we do top 5. And this top 5 Friday is all about the cards that I hate the most. And this might be controversial because at the end of the day it's based on my personal experiences from when I've been playing beta. Maybe I'm scarred by some cards, way back then, or maybe I just like to play a certain archetype that gets countered by one of these cards. So everyone's going to have their different hated cards. I'm sure we're going to align on a few here. But just so you know, it doesn't mean that they're bad cards, okay? Like a lot of these are at the top of the meta. They're just, frustrating and triggering to see over and over and over again. You know what I'm saying? And then also I'm not including any series 4 or 5 cards because they're a little bit too new. A lot of them are very fun and some of them are a bit frustrating, but it's only been out for a few weeks. So I didn't feel like that would be fair to put them in this top 5. I also asked chat last stream, what would they rather see? Top 5 most hated or top 5 most fun? Everybody pick hated, of course, but I'm going to do both. So there's going to be top 5 most fun cards for me to play later on today. So stay tuned, but let's get into this Friday's top 5. Number 5, armor. Oh man, I know this card. I know this card is fine, okay? I understand the value of having armor in Marvel Snap, but my goodness, I am tired of seeing this card. In particular, this kind of deck with the Destroyer, and you protect the things, and you Cosmo. Cosmo's a problem as well. Just hold on, we'll get there. But I don't know. Something about armor is just so annoying to me. I love playing Destroy decks. You're going to see that in a trend in both my top 5 most hated and my top 5 most fun. But I love Destroy decks. They're so much fun to me. I just love the cards that are involved in that. And this just shuts them down. And when it's placed correctly, it basically wins the game. So I'm just over it. I'm just tired of seeing armor. I'd rather it just be a little bit more niche, more of an actual tech card rather than just being run in everything. It just seems like a good fill. Whereas I feel like the tech cards should be like a decision that you make after you've built your deck. You have an open spot and you're like, I'm seeing a lot of this. I'm going to put this tech card in. Instead, armor's in here because she has ongoing ability. And then that gets buffed with Spectrum. And, of course, she's protecting all of these other cards from Destroyer's ability. So it just stacks well with all of those things put together. So I don't know if I would change her or how I'd change her. I honestly, that's not the point of this video. The point is, it just triggers me. I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of her stopping my Destroy decks. I want to play with more Null and be successful with it. So just stop. Just stop it. Stop all this. Stop it. But I do have to recognize that this is a early Series 1 and 2 deck, and then you get into Series 3 and you get Destroyer and you can build this deck, and a lot of new players are able to do something that's competitive, and that's great and all. And I get that. That's cool. But I can't help it. It's triggering. I'm over this. Number 4. Sandman. All right, Sandman, he's a good old 4/1 ongoing. Players can only play one card a turn. I have never liked this card. I get the ideas that you try to ramp, but anytime I've played it, I find playing Sandman on 4 and only getting 1 power is not worth whatever you can play afterwards while restricting your opponent's plays, because then they might have good things or they have leader or whatever else. So it never really has worked out for me. I get that you can cheat out Sandman sometimes with Jubilee and stuff like that. This deck in particular kind of does that. You try to ramp into Sandman, get him out, lock up your opponent, and then play all your big stuff. I get it, but I just don't like it. Playing 1 card a turn is so boring, and when it happens to you and you plan on playing a couple cards, you're setting up for a combo later on, and then you can only play 1 card, it's just this game's just boring now. I'm over it. I'm just going to retreat. So I find he's just an awkward lockup card that just doesn't really create a lot of exciting plays. If anything, it just slows the game down. And then it's just I hope I have a little bit more value than my opponent in the next 2 cards. So anyways, I don't really have much to say with him other than I find him slow and boring. So I don't really love these kind of decks. I actually really enjoy ramp decks. I just don't like the idea of slowing everything down. I can understand why somebody would enjoy this card and this kind of play style and maybe controlling your opponent and restricting their plays. Just not for me. Just not for me. Number 3, Dr. Octopus. Of course I had to put Dr. Oct here. Of course. You guys, if anyone's been following the channel for a while, you know that I don't like this card. And I just don't like it. Like, everyone's been showing me value and playing some decks. Even I've had some highlight reel moments with them, but I just don't like the card. I can't get around it. The character's cool. Love the character. Very cool character. And thematically, it's very on point. Pulling 4 cards, and he's got the 4 snappy things on his back. But like, I don't know. I can't. The RNG is just too much for me. It seems like more often than not, I pull my opponent's hand and it's like infinite, and then it's like, okay, well, great. Then you Shang-Chi. That's the whole point. But my opponent is doing other things while I'm playing their cards. Like, so I just don't know. Like, then I'm focusing on one lane, but how do you win that lane if my plan is to Doc on 5 and then Shang-Chi on 6? Like, great, I destroy their things, but they're probably doing things elsewhere. Meanwhile, I have to deal with the power that I have bestowed upon my opponent. So I just don't know. And then, like, I get it. You take their cards out of their hands so they can't do their crazy combos. That works like once in a blue moon. But like, the consistency, I just don't believe is there with this card. So I have a really hard time enjoying it. It is a lot of power. And sometimes it can work. Obviously, sometimes it can work. A lot of people enjoy this card, but it's not for me. The RNG is too heavy. He's got some sick variants, though. But dang, man, I just can't get around the Doc. And look at this deck. 50% of the time works every time. Exactly what I'm saying. Like, it's just a control, annoying deck. And you hope to just, like, pluck all of your opponent's cards and then, like, I don't know, Spider-Woman them or something like that. Jeez. Yeah, it's going to be a recurring issue on this channel, how I just can't get around Doc. I can't love this guy. He's a tough one to love. But these next two are on a whole different level. Okay, these past 3 are just kind of like a bit annoying. Don't really love playing with them. These next 2, something's got to change. Number 2. Leader. Now, you probably all expected Leader to be number 1, and I think a lot of people, the pitchforks are out. A lot of people want this card nerfed, changed, removed, reworked, you name it, they want it. It's funny because Leader's been around since the beginning, and he was never changed. He's been the same. He's always been a 6/4, copy all the cards your opponent played this turn, but on your side. It's a very powerful effect, and only like in the last week or 2 has it become relevant. So the reason is because DaraJN, he's an awesome streamer on Twitch for Marvel Snap, probably one of the smartest out there for deck building. And he came up with this meta breaker because everybody was running Silver Surfer decks that relied on turn 6 bursty plays, playing like 2-3 cost cards and then your Silver Surfer, boom, a lot of power. It's a great deck. So what he decided to do was he had Leech, who would remove the abilities of all those cards on turn 5, and then you play Leader that copies anything that they want to do. So any power output they're trying to do with their no ability hand is going to be copied by Leader, plus his 4 power is probably going to give you the win. So it's a bit powerful. And that's only one instance of Leader. There's a lot of scenarios where Leader can be absolutely fantastic. Your opponent just Galactus you, right? And then they're setting up for a big turn 6. They're going to drop Null or something. Well, you just play Leader, and then it's going to copy Null, and everything that they worked for just became yours on your side. So I guess that's the problem I think the community has, is the minimal effort it takes to pull off a Leader and get all the value that your opponent has worked towards. So I totally feel that, understand that, and that's why he is number 2 for me. But sometimes I have a hard time hating it because it just wasn't relevant for a very long time in the meta until recently, especially Leech. Leech is not in my top 5, despite a very triggering, frustrating card that he is. He was like the worst card for the longest time and has only started to see a little bit of sunlight in the Marvel Snap meta. So it's kind of funny that people hate on him so much. But it's really just because of this deck. It's taken over the meta. It's a total meta breaker. So yeah, I got to tip my hat to DaraJN because like it's a spark of genius, this deck, to counter the meta and then use some cards that people weren't already using, and to do it so well now to the point that people want nerfs. Would I change Leader? I don't know. I don't think he needs much of a change. Maybe a little bit of a power reduction, because I think the 4 power is what gives him the edge after you've copied everything. Copying things might just be good on its own right, but you can't get it to like 0, 1, or even 2. Maybe you just go to 3 power. Look, I'm not trying to suggest balance changes for any of these cards. But this one I do feel like needs to be changed a little bit at some point, or else we're just going to keep seeing Leader super frequently, and it's just going to keep feeling bad. Number 1, Mr. Negative. Yeah, I got a bone to pick with this card. Okay, first of all, I want to get something out of the way. It's a really fun card to play. when you negatize your deck and then you flip it over and you get a bunch of those really cheap cost cards, and then they're really powerful like Iron Man. All of a sudden he's like 5 power, he doubles at the location, boom, I get this big turn 6. It's really fun. Okay, that's not the problem I have. I don't have a problem when somebody plays it against me, even though sometimes it's a bit annoying. You see negative go down and early enough and you're probably like, I'll get out of here. But overall, I'm like, okay, he still has to draw things. You still got to draw things. It's fine. And then when I play it, it's a bit annoying because I feel like I don't really get negative on time, or even if I do, I don't draw appropriately. So it can be like a bit inconsistent, but even that is fine. I don't mind either of those scenarios. What I don't like about Mr. Negative, what triggers me, what makes me hate this card, is because every single time there is a balance suggestion or a balance change in the game, or even a custom card that has low power, everyone says, well, that's good with Mr. Negative. Well, that'll work in a negative deck. Well, that's a Mr. Negative buff. It's crazy. It's so annoying. So I just hate the design constraint that Mr. Negative does. He absolutely chokes the life out of the design team because they can't print anything with either negative power or even like 3 or under power. Because if it has that, it has to have a not very good effect, but it's already got the low power, so it has to have a good effect to have, be a viable card. So what do? Literally every time they print a card that has low power, you have to consider Mr. Negative. Chat reminds me all the time, but it's a fair point that chat brings up. Like, if it has low power, it might be broken with this card. Like, that's just how it's always going to be. And I hate that. I think without this card, you could open up a lot of design space, and future cards wouldn't be so much of a problem. He's not the only one. I think current talks is about Galactus being a bit of a problem card. There's other problem cards out there. I recognize that, but I think time and time again, this card has proven to be a problem. It has been nerfed like 3 times, and all they've done is change the power. That's not the problem, okay? Even the ability, it is a problem, but I don't want it to be removed. I have a hard time suggesting a change for this because it is thematically very cool. It's very cool to see those cards flipped and then draw them, play them for cheap. Like, it creates a deck archetype, which is very fun. But maybe you only change a certain amount in the deck, so it's less consistent. And then when the card's printed with low power, it's like, well, you still need to draw the right one. You got to draw after turn 4 or 3 whenever you get negative out. So it's not that game breaking. It's okay. We can print something that has 0 power, and a good effect. Like, Null just came out, right? Null just came out and everybody was like, broken with Mr. Negative. It's so good, it's broken. And you know what? I've tried it and it is good. You can pull off some crazy things with that and Arnim Zola. But it's still, again, it's not very consistent. But every time it's going to be a talking point. Mr. Negative. How does this affect Mr. Negative? This card's going to be good in that deck. Like, I don't know. It's too much. And I feel like if I was on the design team, this card would trigger me. I'm just talking about the card and it's triggering me. So anyways, I keep saying it, but I love everything about this card except for what it does to the design space. And it so negatively affects the design space. It's such a negative, Mr. Negative thing to the design space that I wanted to give it number 1 because it's frustrating. All right, and time for the honorable mentions. So some of these, honestly, I could have had it in the top 5. I was so close. I was bouncing back and forth on them. And one in particular is Cosmo. I more and more I dislike this card for the sole reason that there is about 105, I believe, on reveal cards in Marvel Snap, and we don't even have 200 cards yet in the entire collection of Marvel Snap. We're getting close, but still, that's over 50% of the collection that can be countered by a single dog. It's kind of wild. It's kind of crazy when you talk about it like that. Yeah, it only rejects one location, and maybe you can dodge it, but it's not that easy to dodge. I think it's more easy for your opponent to predict where you're going to play those on-reveal cards, and then they throw down a Cosmo. It stops a whole load of decks. It's got the ongoing ability, which I'm now realizing is missing there, but he does have an ongoing ability, right? So, it buffs with the Spectrum in that kind of deck, which is, also kind of triggering me. But just so often I'm trying to pull off a really cool combo, got really close, and then Cosmo comes down. It's just like, well, I'll just retreat because that was lame. So I'm pretty over this card. I don't know how they change it. Honestly, the power is all fine and whatnot. There does need to be an on reveal counter in the game. Like that, there has to be a counter, I think, for everything in this game. But maybe it should be an on reveal ability instead of an ongoing, and it only counters that turn's on reveal abilities. So it's not like constantly stopping a whole load of decks throughout the entire game. You just have to plan it a little bit better. Something like that. I don't know. It's a pretty annoying card. That was close to the top 5. Then we got Agatha. Oh, geez. I know a lot of people like Agatha, and like she can be fun, but I just don't like the idea of like my deck being played by an AI. Like I want to play the game, not click end turn 6 times. So I like Agatha is okay in the game if you want to play that style, but she does take all the boosters, so it's not even like worth booster farming with her. She just kind of a weird one. It's more memey and for fun, so I just don't, that's not my style. I don't really like playing with Agatha. Then we got Leech. I already talked about Leech being a problem, but man, I couldn't put him in the top 5. I'm sure a lot of people are hating on my boy Leech. I couldn't put him in the top 5. He's been one of the worst cards for so long, like 5 months plus. He was one of the worst cards, and only now are we starting to see his potential. So I gotta just let him be in the honorable mentions for now. Maybe eventually he'll be a top 5 worst cards and needs to be changed cards. I don't know. It does feel bad when all the abilities that you have get removed from your hand, and you just like are like, oh, okay, turn 6 isn't happening for me. I guess I'm just gonna leave. Sometimes it can work out actually when you're playing like a 0 deck, and then he removes the abilities, and it's like, oh, okay, thanks, Leech. But for the most part, it feels bad. And then when in combination with Leader, those two are just an absolute menace right now. So I don't want anything to change, but just maybe the meta change. And then also, I think if Leader is adjusted, if Leader gets nerfed, I think Leech loses a lot of popularity. Without Leader, Leech isn't much. I think Leech is an okay spot, but it is frustrating. It does suck when you lose all those abilities. Then we got Scorpion. Scorpion just kind of feels bad. He whips your hand and you all get -1. I don't know. I hate seeing all the red numbers in my hand, and I feel like I've lost so much power, and then just the rest of the game is going to be tough. So I don't love Scorpion. And then Killmonger. I don't love how Killmonger totally counters Flood Zoo decks, like 1 cost with Khazar and stuff like that. It's just a single card and he destroys them all. It's a little bit oppressive, and it works really well with Destroy decks, which I do love, but it's just a bit much. I feel like he should only destroy like 3 1-cost cards, because that way if your opponent is playing a lot of them, you get 3. That's probably pretty good. I'd say on average, maybe with Killmonger, you're destroying 4, maybe, if there's like a lot out there or you're trying to destroy your own. So if it just destroyed 3, you're not losing that much value, keeps his value, and he's a 3 cost, 3 power, destroys 3. I don't know, maybe. Anyways, that is my honorable mentions. Those are my top 5 cards that I hate the most. Again, personal experiences, guys. You can hate on some different cards, and that is totally fine. You can also love these cards, and that is beautiful. I love that some people enjoy playing with these cards, and everyone has different experiences. That's the best part about this game. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.